Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to this special presentation from 365 TechCon. My name's Andy, and here today we're going to be delivering a special presentation. This is Preparing for Takeoff with Microsoft Copilot. I'd like to welcome everybody to this special presentation. So we've got a lot to cover, and we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So over the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about getting started with Microsoft Copilot. We are taking questions. So wherever you're joining from, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, feel free to use the chat window. Those questions are going to come through. We're going to be able to see those live. We'll be able to go back and respond to those questions. And I'm going to stick around at the end of the 45 minutes, and we're going to take some more questions from anybody that's out there. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the presentation and today's content. So we are here to talk about preparing for Microsoft Copilot, and specifically some of the things that we want to cover in this webinar are a few bullet points. Number one, there's a Copilot for everyone. We're here to help you to pick out the right Copilot experience for you as an individual, but also for your organization. We also want to point out that even if you're not currently using Copilot in your organization, there's a pretty good chance that there are people involved in your organization that are already using generative AI. So we want to give you some tips and tricks on how to discover what Copilot, Copilot Pro, and Copilot for Microsoft 365 are capable of, so that you can get your people together in a safe and secure way with generative AI. We also want to teach you how you can elevate your workflow and get the most out of this amazing tool. So we are going to compare each of the different versions of Copilot that are there. Copilot for individuals, Copilot Pro. We're also going to talk about Copilot with enterprise protected data, as well as Copilot for Microsoft 365. From there, we will break down each of the experience. We're going to do some step-by-step walkthroughs. I'm going to show you a few things that you can do with Copilot that are very, very powerful, a few different examples. And so we're going to have a couple of demos as well. And then from a capability standpoint, we are going to touch base briefly on what Copilot is capable of. It is important to temper your expectations when working with a tool like this, because there are certain guidelines and parameters that are put in place from Microsoft that limit what Copilot is capable of. And so we need to work within those boundaries. That being said, there's going to be a lot that you can do with Copilot, and hopefully we'll show you a few things that you didn't know of that are really going to increase your curiosity, and you're going to want to dive into this further. At the end of the presentation, we are going to reference a couple of our upcoming events and a couple of conferences, and drop a promo code for you as well. So whether you're here because you're an individual and you're wanting to learn more about Copilot, or maybe you work in a small business or even an enterprise environment, we're going to show you that there is a Copilot for everyone, and we're going to walk you through how you can get started quickly and make the most of that. So a couple of things to baseline as we get ready to get started here. You have the fundamentals of AI and productivity, and that's one of the things that we're going to cover. We want to give you a basic understanding of how AI is going to transform the way that you work. It has revolutionized the way that we work in ways unseen since the internet was first publicly available many, many years ago. This is the biggest change in the enterprise and in business that we've seen since the introduction of the internet. From there, we want to help you discover some of the unique features of Copilot across the different versions and how they can apply to your work scenarios and help you to be a little bit more productive, extend your capabilities as a user, extend your capabilities as an organization. We want to help you to understand how you can seamlessly work Copilot into your daily Microsoft usage, enhancing tools like Teams, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so forth. We want you to understand the licensing requirements and the options for accessing Copilot for every type of user in your environment. And then we're going to give you some tips and tricks along the way to really make the most out of this. So when it comes to Copilot, there are different versions available. There's Copilot for individuals, and then there's Copilot for organizations. The Copilot for individuals is typically available at copilot.microsoft.com. You can log right into copilot.microsoft.com, And then if you're an individual, you have the option to sign in with a Outlook account, a Live account, or even a Hotmail account, your personal Microsoft account. You can even create one there and you can get started with Copilot free. And this is going to be the equivalent of the free version of ChatGPT. It's going to be a conversational AI that is going to allow you to search and ask questions and research and follow up with information. There's a pro version of that that's available as well. And for $20 a month, you're going to be able to take advantage of the pro features. Pro features are going to include access to the latest GPT models on the back end, like GPT-4 Turbo, for instance. It's going to extend your capabilities as well into also priority access. So you're not going to run into throttling in high times of activity with many different users out there. But it's also going to allow you to create content. So with Copilot Pro, you're going to be able to create Word, Excel, and PowerPoint presentations. You're going to be able to draft notes in OneNote. You're going to be able to work with Outlook and create content there. And you're going to be able to tie back into your personal Office 365 account in order to do so. But these options are great for you if you're an individual or maybe even like a small business owner. But they're not great for organizations because there's some things that are missing from these versions of Copilot that the organization is really going to want. So when we switch over to the organization option, there is the free version of Copilot that you're going to be able to take advantage of there. And there is an extension of Copilot with enterprise data protection. And that's going to allow users to use generative AI conversationally in the large language model, ask questions, do research, search, and so forth. But it's going to be able to do so with data protection in play. So with that version of Copilot, a user would need to log in with their school or work account. And when they do that, when they log in with that school or work account, then you're going to have that data protection so that your proprietary commercial data is protected and it's not going to be used to train the model. It's not going to be captured by Microsoft. It's going to stay within your data construct. But that doesn't give you the full capabilities of Copilot. You can work with the search assistant, you can work with that virtual chat assistant, but you're not going to be able to do all the things that Copilot's capable of. And that's where Copilot for Microsoft 365 comes into play. For $30 per user per month, you're going to be able to do everything that the other Copilot versions can do, including priority model access, and you're going to be able to draft and generate brand new content from Copilot for Microsoft 365, but you're also going to be able to work with it inside of Microsoft Teams. So now you can bring that Copilot experience into your meetings. So you can do a meeting recap. You can generate meeting notes. You can work with asking for actionable items and follow-up items within a meeting. Additionally, you're going to get the Microsoft Graph grounding. So the Microsoft Graph allows Copilot to connect to information that you as an individual have access to, explicit permissions and controls to access. And with that graph grounding, the Copilot results are going to be more relevant to you as a user and to the question or the prompt that you ask of Copilot. And that graph grounding is going to happen both when you send the original request and whenever the information comes back from the service on the other end. That just ensures that you're getting information that's relevant to what you're working on in that business process. And it leverages the data that you already have in your Microsoft Cloud, whether it's in OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, as well as Outlook in your emails and extending to your calendars. But you're also going to get enterprise grade data protection. So as an organization, when you have Copilot for Microsoft 365, you're going to have a business agreement with Microsoft that's going to protect your organization's data. Your data is going to live in the Microsoft cloud, but you're the only users that are going to have access to that information. And so you're going to have enterprise grade protection. If you need to put security and compliance in place, if you need sensitivity labels and you need certain information to be excluded from Copilot results, you're going to be able to do that with Copilot for Microsoft 365. Additionally, with that business agreement with Microsoft, your data never leaves your tenant. The only information that actually goes to the large language model is the prompt that you send. The prompt is going to be grounded with information from your data, but your data actually never leaves your tenant in order to pull back the Copilot results. And the language model the service that Copilot's built on top of is not going to be trained on your information's data. So you don't have to worry about your information becoming publicly available through that training mechanism. And finally, you're going to be able to extend Copilot. There is an extensibility option that allows you to use Copilot Studio to extend beyond the Microsoft Cloud to connect into other data sources and other information that your organization finds useful. You can do things like create a custom chatbot for HR, for instance, and that's going to allow you to leverage all the assets that your HR team has created through that chat interface and quickly bring that back to users. You're going to be able to create custom copilots in Copilot Studio for Q&A bots. Or you're going to be able to bring that into the Copilot chat experience. So we'll talk more about that in a bit. So there's a lot of value adds for going to Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now, I do want to point out that this licensing works with small business licenses as well as enterprise licenses as well. All right, so when we go and we actually look at each one of these experiences, I'm going to do some demos on these coming up in just a moment. But this is the first one that you're going to run into. So at Copilot at Microsoft.com, I'm going to be able to go and access Copilot for an individual. When I go here, if I log in with my personal account, I'm going to be able to save conversations. I'm going to be able to go back and revisit those a little bit later on. But whenever I'm here, this is the free version of Copilot. So there is a little bit of throttling, and it does use a lower tier GPT for that processing. However, I do have the ability to work with the various outputs, whether I want a more creative, a balanced, or a precise output from the model. Additionally, I'm going to be able to talk to Copilot. It does a dictate feature, so I could have a conversation with it here if I need to. I'm going to be able to reference an attachment or upload a file and have Copilot work with that. I'm also going to be able to work with images, and that's one of the things that I think Copilot's really great at here is working with images. Now, additionally to working with images, there is a designer feature that's available, and that's going to allow you to customize AI-generated images if you need. So there's like two different levels of that. You can create images using Copilot and DALL-E 3 on the back end, or you can upload an image and you can actually have Copilot tell you and give you information about that particular image, which is a really powerful thing to do. But this is the Copilot free version. So I'm limited with the number of characters that I can input in a single prompt. And this is a conversation. So there's only so many turns that I'm going to be able to take. It's typically 30 turns back and forth, and then we have to go and create a new conversation. And I would need to be signed in with my personal account in order to revisit that conversation later. So this is the lowest entry point for actually working with Copilot, but it's going to give you that chat-based experience. So this is the first thing that I actually want to demo and show you a little bit on. So I'm actually going to head into my web browser here, and this is me logged in with my personal account. Now you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen here that I actually have some recent chats already available. So I'm going to be able to go back and revisit some of the conversations that I've already had. And you can see it actually goes back a number of days. And I can tell you this history for me actually goes back to March of last year. I was a very early adopter of Copilot when it was known as Bing Chat. When Microsoft announced it at a big event in March of 2023, I was hitting the refresh button to sign up right away. And I've been working with this version of Copilot ever since. In fact, this same version of Copilot, I have it on my mobile phone and I use it almost every single day. It's really, really helpful. So it's great as a search engine. It's great as a research assistant. It's great for getting me off of the starting block for something. So for example, I could go in and say, let's need to create an outline for a webinar on I'm going to say an intro to Microsoft Copilot. And just like that, natural language, I've started the conversation with Copilot. So in this particular instance, Copilot is actually going to conversationally start returning a response. Now, we'll get into prompt engineering a little bit later, but what I've actually done here is called a zero shot. I've just asked it for something, and then it's going to kind of do a brain dump. And through my conversation back and forth, I can kind of clean this up a little bit if I need to. So in this particular instance, I told it I wanted to create an outline, and it inferred, okay, well, you should do a welcome and an introduction. You should do a brief section on how to understand Copilot, some of the key components of that, how to use Microsoft Copilot in action, some technical requirements, and so forth. So it's doing kind of a brain dump of things that it thinks that might be applicable to this particular webinar that I'm going to potentially deliver. So we're going to keep these results, and we're going to come back to them in a moment. But I do want to point out, as we're looking at this, notice down at the bottom it tells me learn more, and it's actually providing links and references to this particular content. And throughout this outline, I might see numbers referencing the things that it's actually outputted here. It is extended from the language model that it was trained on to the web. So it is using Microsoft's Bing search engine to extend and pull back additional resources. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm going to be able to ask it follow-up questions, and it does suggest some follow-up questions at the bottom. And I'm going to be able to continue prompting against this and taking turns. I'm one of 30 thus far. I could go back and I could continue asking it additional questions if I need. But I also want to point out I can copy these results. They're now on my clipboard. I can go and take those and use them in a new document if I wanted to. Also, I could export these results, and this is a feature that I really like. And because I'm logged in with my personal account, I do have an Office 365 account on the back end of that. When I go to export this, I can export it to like a Word document, a PDF, or even a text document. So say, for example, I exported this to Word, it might download that, or it might actually save that to my personal OneDrive and create a document in there. And that's exactly what's happening here. This is creating a Word document based off of that outline, and it put that inside of my OneDrive. So I have the outline, and then at the bottom, it actually put the resources that it used for that. And that's because I'm logged in with my personal account, and I have an Office 365 account on the back end. So this is just to kind of let you know how we can quickly get started with this. But this is the free version of Copilot that's going to be available for an individual, and it could be individuals inside of your organization. Now, I'm going to go back up here to the upper right-hand corner. Notice that we are in chats, but there is a plugin toggle. And these things underneath here, these are actually called copilots. So you have copilots to extend Copilot in Copilot. Wrap your head around that. But I'm in the default chat, which is this guy right here. However, there are different copilots like Designer, focuses on images. Vacation Planner does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's going to help you plan vacations. And so it's kind of pointed at vacation-specific resources to help you plan that out. Cooking Assistant, going to be pointed to cooking-specific resources, and Fitness Trainer would be the same. So you can actually work with different copilots over there if you need to. Now, I'm going to hit new topic. That's going to take me out of this conversation, but it is going to save that. And it's right over here on the sidebar. I can rename or I can delete that. I could even share that, or I could export that if I need to right from here. So that's the power of logging in with your personal ID and using the free version. But you do have the ability to upgrade to the Pro version, and you can take advantage of Copilot Pro. Now, when you do Copilot Pro, it is going to ask you to sign up for the trial. And in this case, I probably don't want that on the screen. It's going to ask you to sign up for a trial. You're going to get a free month, and then from there, it's going to be a monthly $20 fee. So, what's it going to give you for from that trial subscription? Well, it's going to update you to the faster GPT models, GPT-4, GPT-4 Turbo. Additionally, it's going to allow you to work with custom copilots. You're going to be able to create your Copilot GPTs and extend those capabilities. So you're going to get a little bit more, and then you're going to be able to not get caught up with all of the throttling that you might have at times when the Copilot service is really busy. That being said, Copilot Pro is a relatively new offering for Microsoft. It's only been here for a little while. I'm still on the basic free plan over here, just logged in, and I've been using that for over a year now, having a really great time with that. All right, so let's head back to the PowerPoint. So with that individual option, you are going to be able to work with Copilot, but it's going to be outside the confines of your organization's information security and architecture, and that's a big thing to keep in mind. As an organization, you are limited with what a user inserts over here. You don't have that commercial data protection necessarily in place, and so people might be using this, or they might even be using like a Chat GPT to work with generative AI, because this generative AI uh, um, wave that has was unleashed by OpenAI in November of 2022 has caught the world by storm. And the number of people that have adapted to this is in the hundreds of millions of users in a very short period of time. And we haven't seen anything like this in the tech industry in a while. So there's a good chance that there are people in your organization that are actually using this today. All right, so next up, we have the organizational model. And there's two different versions of that I want to point out. I'm going to walk you through like each one of them. The first one that I want to show you is what we call Copilot for enterprise data protection or commercial data protection. And what that means is that when you use this version of Copilot, you're actually logged in with your user account, your work or school account. And the data is going to be protected for that organization. Tells us that in the upper corner, right up here. So this means that anything that's entered into this chat is not captured, it's not kept, it's not even accessible with Microsoft's engineers. But the conversation cannot be revisited. Once I finish this conversation and I move on to do something else, when I return back here, the conversation's gone. I'm not going to be able to go back, and I'm not going to be able to recover it. Additionally, Microsoft doesn't capture your prompts, it doesn't capture your data, and it doesn't train the model on that. But this is actually available by default, even in your organization, unless your admins turned it off. So, for example, I work in a large healthcare organization, and this feature is turned on by default from day number one. We would have to manually disable Bing search, and we'd have to disable Copilot with commercial data protection in order to prevent our users from going to copilot.microsoft.com and working with this today. So it comes on by default, and it's actually available right now for your users unless you've disabled that. So for example, if I head into my web browser and I go to copilot.microsoft.com, I'm going to see that I'm logged in with my demo work account, and I'm going to see that the data is labeled as protected over here. And your personal data and your company data is protected. But notice there's no chat history over here. It doesn't exist. So what I would be able to do is now have a conversation with Copilot here, and I get to choose my model like before, creative, or balanced or precise. And then I can choose like maybe the GPT model. This is actually, there's no extra cost for this. This is actually built into your default enterprise or small business licensing. So you're going to be able to, as a user, to use this right away. And then you're going to be able to go and start working with Copilot. So for example, so I'm just going to ask it to tell me about Copilot with commercial data protection. Now, what it's actually doing is it's pulling not only from its training, but it's also pulling from the web and its Microsoft resources. And it should give us a list of resources at the back or at the bottom of this output whenever it's actually done. So we're going to let that run. Notice this one's running pretty fast. It's because it's using GPT-4 for this. And it's giving us a pretty good overview of this. Now, it did provide some additional learning resources here. So we can see it's pointing to a couple of Learn articles from Microsoft, therot.com, and a couple other publicly available websites as well. And it does that through the Bing search results. It does allow you to follow up with questions. Here, I'm going to be able to copy the output or the response to my clipboard. Just like before, I could download a copy of this in a couple of different formats. You can even read it out loud to me. So I'm just going to do the export to Word, show you what that looks like. And because I have an enterprise account and I was logged in with it, it's going to drop that into my OneDrive as part of that enterprise account. And you see, I'm going to get a similar format for the document here that I had before. So I'm able to get started pretty quickly here. Now, with this, because it's conversational AI, I do have the ability to ask a follow-up, and that's the big advantage of being able to work with this, is to ask a follow-up. So, for example, like it infers, do I want to know like the difference between Copilot and Copilot for Microsoft 365? Not quite. I'd like to know, what is the difference between Copilot, and we'll spell that correctly, and commercial data protection. And I'm going to say, can you give that info in a table, please? So not only can I ask it a question or a follow-up question, I'm going to be able to go back, and in this case, I'm going to ask it to compare two things, and I'm actually asking it to give me a certain format of that. And so it's going to go ahead and put this in a table format. It does use Markdown initially for this, but notice in the upper right-hand corner of that response, there's an Excel logo right up here. So I would actually be able to open this in Excel, and that's a really handy little shortcut. So here it's just creating a couple of columns for me, breaking down the different features, Copilot and where it's available, and then Copilot with commercial data protection, which is really nice. Now, again, I do have a certain number of turns that I am able to take here. So as as the output comes out, it'll tell you like the number of returns that you're moving through. But I can't revisit this conversation after the fact, but I can continue to converse with this and iterate on this conversation and do some really powerful things. Now, I do have the ability to export just like before to a Word document, but I'm really curious about editing in Excel. So I'm going to click on edit in Excel, and just like before, it's going to create a file in my OneDrive, but this time it's going to be an Excel workbook. And now I've got this nice table in my OneDrive. My table has headers. Go ahead and format that. And wow, got a great table, great starting point, and it came from conversational AI. So you're going to be able to do this today in your organization with your enterprise account, provided that the organization hasn't turned off this particular feature. So it's just going to copilot.microsoft.com, logged in with your school or work account. So quick way to get started there. And that's one of the options that we have for an enterprise. Now, next up, we have Copilot for Microsoft 365. So this is the one that we're paying $30 per user per month. This Copilot is connected to my organizational data. So using the Microsoft Graph, it does connect to the content and information that I have access to. This particular version of Copilot is the cross-application experience. I like to think of this version of Copilot as Jarvis, and that's really what it is for me. This version of Copilot is my virtual assistant because it can connect to my enterprise data. It can connect to information that I got stored in my OneDrive, in the SharePoint, and the Microsoft Teams that I'm a member of. It's also going to be able to connect to information that is in my Outlook, such as my calendar or even my emails. And it's going to be able to allow me to do a whole lot of things with natural language and conversational-based approach. I am logged in using my enterprise account. So it could be a small business account. It could also be like an E3, an E5 account if you're in the enterprise, and that does extend to the academic cloud and to the government cloud as well. So you will be able to use this in a number of different areas. Because we are connected to a licensed version of Copilot for Microsoft 365, it does allow me to revisit conversations and to get back to those conversations later on if I need. But everything that's happening here is under the privacy and security standards and settings that I have implemented in my Microsoft tenant. So if I have security and compliance features turned on, if I'm using Microsoft Purview, if I'm using sensitivity labels and retention guidelines, Copilot's going to respect that. If I put information in certain SharePoint sites under protection, Copilot's not going to be able to access that information. And as a user in the organization, I am also going to be only or limited to only seeing things that I have direct access to. So, for example, the CEO is not going to be able to go in and say, "Hey, show me everything that Andy is working on," unless that CEO has direct access to that same information. So it does compartmentalize that information. But with this, I can revisit conversations, I can prompt and ask questions of the Copilot service, and I can use this as a way to enhance my work experience with the data that I already have using this personal assistant to do some really powerful things. So let's actually go and take a look at that. So I'm going to go to a new tab because I want to keep this information up. I'm going to revisit it in just a minute. And I'm going to go right over here to this Copilot tab. And I have the work toggle on in the upper left-hand corner. So you see it says work over here, tells me who I'm logged in as, and I can see like my recent activity over here. So I know where I'm connected. Now, a couple of things that I do want to point out on this particular screen. When I'm starting here, it does give me some initial prompt suggestions. These are some quick win, easy prompts for a user to use, especially with somebody who doesn't know how to prompt or what prompt engineering is. These are relatively new terms for a lot of users and organizations out there. So a prompt is what you ask Copilot to do, whether you're prompting like you would search if you were using Bing search or Google search, for instance, whether you are asking a question of a colleague, whether you are asking a question of a chatbot. That's what a prompt is. You're asking or requesting something to be done, information. These prompts can get you started, but you also have the ability to view Copilot Labs, and there's additional prompts that you can click and you can view right from here. Copilot Lab has different categories and it has different prompts that are there. So like if I'm wanting a prompt to help me create something, here's a few ideas. And write a compelling intro paragraph for this document. That sounds like a great prompt. So I'm going to click on that and notice it went ahead and dropped it into the prompt editor here. But now it's asking me, hey, what file do you want to reference? And that's one of the things that this Copilot does. It allows me to connect to my files. It allows me to connect to information that I have stored in OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. I can even click on the attach option here and look, I can look up people. I can look up files. I can even reference meetings and I can reference emails. And that's really, really powerful. So let's say I've got this file right over here and I want to reference that. I can go through, I got a coffee shop business plan. I'm going to ask it to draft an intro paragraph to that. And I'm going to let it do its work. And it's going to use the Microsoft Graph to connect to that document, make sure I have permissions to it. It's going to go to the large language model and it's going to do its generative AI over there. It's going to return back to the graph, double check permissions, make sure everything's good, and then it's going to send that back to me right over here. Now, this is going to take a minute. I can tell you why. That document is about 4,300 words, and it's 12 to 14 pages. Just accessed it a little while ago, so I'm pretty familiar with it. So it's going to take a moment or two to maybe look at the entire document, kind of summarize it, distill it down to its core points, and then it's going to write an intro paragraph actually based off of that. It's doing all this behind the scenes. So I can go and refill my coffee while this is actually happening. That's really, really powerful. So with this, I'm just going to let that run. I'll come back to this particular prompt in a moment. So the big question is, with the toggle up here, work and web, which one's going to be the one that we actually want to work with? Which one's going to be the best? And to be honest, I go back and forth between both. If I'm just doing research, I usually go over here to Copilot with commercial data protection, and I just have a conversation so that I'm not mixing my search results from the web with content that maybe I have inside the organization. So I might go here and start a process, and then I might transition over here and fine tune or follow up with that process and go a little bit deeper inside of that prompt. So I'm going to go back over to this conversation, and I actually had this compare Copilot and Copilot with commercial data protection. So now I'm going to say, well, how about update the table and include Copilot for M365. And just to be nice, I'm going to say please. And I'm going to just tell it to update that table, and I'm going to let it actually run its result, and it should actually do that pretty quickly. So while it's running that, here comes the updated table. It's going to spit that out for me. I'm just going to double check on my other result over here. And again, this was taking so long because of how big that document was. But you can see like I got a few other examples over here. I'll just show you some outputs from like previously. So like, for example, can you provide an overview of all the scheduled articles that were published in our tenant this week? Paul's been pretty busy. He does quite a bit of content, or maybe draft a standard uh, uh, let's go back up to the top. Draft a standard operating procedural manual for new baristas. Maybe my organization, Jolly Roger Java, is getting ready to open a new coffee shop, and we want to standardize those operations. And so it can actually look at information in the organization for some of that, and then we can actually cross-reference it with additional information, and it'll tell you where that came from, and you can actually view the resources. So very similar to what we saw with the Copilot with commercial data protection. But in this instance, this information is actually building on content inside of my Microsoft tenant and its environment. So it's really, really powerful for enterprise application. Now I'm going to go back over here and let's look at this table. So now you see that table's been updated. We now have 3 columns in the table. And now I've got a nice Excel spreadsheet with that information. And now I'm going to take that. Maybe I'm going to go and format that into a new table. I'm going to change the name of this. So I'm going to call it Copilot comparison. And just so it's unique, I'm going to put the date on this there. All right, so now I've got this document that I can work with. And if I head back over to this Copilot, I could actually reference that. So for example, I could go in and say over here, create an outline for a presentation with, and I'm just going to reference that file that I just created. There's my Copilot comparison. It's already there. It's going to reference that. So a little bit of search, and then I can come over here. I could have done the search from here, but I'm just kind of showing you some of the back and forth between the different experiences here. All right, so we're just going to let this run, create an outline for that. It'll take just a moment, and then it's going to create that, and then I'll be able to go to the next steps, and I can actually do more with that. Now, as this is actually happening, let me head back to the PowerPoint because I got a few more things that I need to show you. There's another Copilot feature that's really helpful, and that's Copilot in Edge. It actually exists in the sidebar in the upper right-hand corner up here. Now, if you're in an enterprise environment, there's a chance that your organization may have turned this feature off. This feature is actually turned on in my demo environment. It's turned on for me to be able to use. And this allows Copilot to travel with me. And it's all the Copilot experiences. It's either going to be the Copilot for individual or Copilot Pro. It'll be Copilot for commercial data protection. If I'm logged into the Edge web browser with my work or school account, it would also be Copilot for Microsoft 365 if I'm logged in with my school or work account as well. And this is going to allow Copilot to work, travel with me wherever I happen to go in that web experience. So let's actually head back. All right. So like, let's say, for example, I went to a website and I'm going to go to support.microsoft.com. And let's say I was looking for information about Teams meeting recordings. While I'm here, I might want to use Copilot against this. So I would hit the Copilot in the sidebar, and I got because I'm logged in with my work account here, it's going to say work or web. I'm in web, and then it's going to allow me to Copilot against the current page that I'm on. So for example, I can say generate a page summary, and it's going to do that. It's going to generate a page summary, and you can see I've ran a couple of previous prompts against this right over here. But it's going to generate a page summary based off of the thing that I'm actually looking at right now. So I'm just browsing the web, and now Copilot's traveling along with me as my note taker, my summarizer, my personal assistant. Now I've got this great summary. I can do like I did before. I can export, copy that to the clipboard, ask additional questions, do whatever I need to do with this particular content. So it will travel with me as I move. But you can also use this to reference maybe something in the document you're working on. So like, for example, if I go back here, I'm going to click over, maybe like do a new page. And I could reference, depending on the settings that I've got enabled, there's a settings option. You can actually have it contextually aware of the page that you're on. So maybe you're visiting your corporate intranet. You would potentially be able to use Copilot against that corporate intranet, or maybe even a document stored inside of there side by side. But a lot of that capability is actually built into the app itself. So like, for example, if I'm in Word, I can go and use the Copilot side panel, and that's going to be basically the same experience. But I just want to point out, Edge kind of has that extra feature, travels along with you, and there's a lot of really powerful things that you can do with that. Now, as far as Copilot for Microsoft 365 is concerned, it is built on top of Microsoft's security, compliance, privacy, and the commitment to responsible AI. So you are going to have your organization's security and compliance in place. You are going to have that peace of mind because you've signed a business agreement with Microsoft. They are not going to pull information out of your tenant. They are not going to train the model on your data. The data never leaves your tenant. And then from the end user perspective, you're going to be able to use natural language through your web browser, through Microsoft Teams, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Loop, Whiteboard. You're also going to be able to use it inside of Microsoft Stream, OneDrive, upcoming in Microsoft SharePoint, and other apps in the Power Platform. You're going to be able to use natural language to ask questions, to generate new content, and to have a virtual assistant with you no matter where you go. It's going to have the Microsoft Graph to ground it to your data so that it only pulls back the information that you have access to. And it's going to extend that through those apps that you're working with. Now, high level, this is how it works. You go into one of these apps, you ask a question, you ask it, you prompt against it. It sends that to the Copilot service. From there, it goes to the graph. It looks for your files and content, looks for emails, files, meetings, chats, Teams conversations, calendars, contacts, and more. Then it sends that information to Copilot as an optimized prompt, and then it goes to the large language model. That language model is built on Azure OpenAI, which is maintained by Microsoft. That's their personal private version of the large language model. From there, it's going to process what you've asked it to do. It's going to create that output, and it's going to send it back to Copilot. Copilot's going to send it to the graph one more time so that it does post-processing, making sure that the data is relevant and accurate based off of what you're looking for. And then from there, it's going to actually send it back to you through the app that you're in. So it might take, in some cases, a few seconds for a prompt to go through. In other cases, it might take a little bit longer, especially if you have a document with 4,300 words and 12 to 14 pages in it. It might take a little while longer, but it's going to be infinitely faster than if you try to do that yourself. Now, I'm giving you the short version of how Copilot actually works. There's a longer version of that. Now, as far as Copilot's concerned, it does work across most of your Microsoft apps and services. There's Copilot in specific apps. So there's Copilot in Word, Copilot in Excel, Copilot in PowerPoint. And then there's a cross-app experience. And that's really what the Copilot chat is. That was what I was showing you a little while ago. This, going back here, this is Copilot chat. So that allows you to work with a cross-app experience across files that are stored in OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, across your calendar and Outlook, your emails, your chats in Teams, and your conversations in Teams channels. So that experience is going to work across the board, and some of that experience is starting to roll out in the other apps as well. So what are some of the things that Copilot for Microsoft 365 can actually do? Well, if you're working in Microsoft Teams, you can use it inside of chat, a small one-on-one or a group chat. It can help you to get caught up quickly, and it can look for key takeaways from that conversation. Also works inside of channel conversations. So you can use this in an active channel to get caught up quickly, find key insights and takeaways if you need. But the biggest and most used Copilot experience that I see is actually in Microsoft Teams meetings. With Teams meetings, with transcription available, Copilot's going to be able to recap that meeting. It's going to be able to generate meeting notes and meeting summaries. It's going to be able to identify actionable items, unresolved questions, and follow-up items. You're going to be able to do this while the meeting is in progress and after the meeting is over. If you are a user and email is kind of the center of your day, Copilot in Outlook is going to be a huge component for you. It's going to help you to summarize email and email threads. It's extending to summarize across email threads now, but you're going to be able to draft new messages and reply to messages with just a couple of quick bullet points. You're even going to be able to coach and change the tone, the length, and the output of your emails. This is the second most accessed experience that I see from users working in Copilot. If you're working with Microsoft Excel, you're going to be able to analyze data and visualize that. Word, you're going to be able to summarize and ask questions, draft and refine content. PowerPoint, you're going to be able to summarize and create new PowerPoint presentations. I got a couple of slides. I'm going to go more in depth on that in just a moment. And then if you're using other tools like OneNote, Whiteboard, Loop, and even Copilot Chat, brainstorming, drafting new ideas, creating new content or core features, summarizing notes in OneNote, summarizing notes in Loop, and then with Whiteboard, categorizing and organizing content. But the most powerful one is going to be that Copilot chat, your work assistant, because that works cross app. It can do things like synthesizing multiple documents, doing comparisons and takeaways of those documents, summarizing information, maybe create an executive summary of a presentation, and then brainstorming and creating new content. So let me skip over these and just kind of show you a couple of bullet points as we get toward the end and we start to wrap up here. So with Copilot Chat, the virtual assistant, it can work with all of your data that you have access to because of the Microsoft Graph. It can help you to research. It can help you to generate new ideas. It can help you to summarize information, to compare information, and it can do this almost auto-magically. This is available in about 4 or 5 different endpoints, whether you're accessing it through the web browser, through Microsoft Teams, through the Edge sidebar, or from Microsoft 365 Home. This integrates with all of the data that you have access to that Copilot can work with. The Edge sidebar, we've already talked about. I'll skip forward. So if I'm working inside of Microsoft Teams, if I'm in a Teams meeting, I can open up Copilot in the side panel while that meeting is in progress, provided transcription is enabled. Then I would be able to use that to recap the meeting if maybe I was a few minutes late joining. Or I could ask Copilot questions about when did we make certain decisions, or who is going to be responsible for this task? What are the actionable items that we need to take away from this meeting? I could even ask it to recap and generate meeting notes after the fact. And it's going to do an amazing job of that. But I would be able to access this same Copilot after the meeting's over, provided that we actually had a meeting transcript in place. If you're working in Outlook, we mentioned you're going to be able to summarize emails. So I'm going to be able to go in and say, catch me up on this thread. It could be maybe something that happened overnight and it was a high priority event. I get in first thing in the morning. I don't have to read through each individual email. I can have Copilot summarize it in bullet points for me, and then it'll reference the individual messages that I can follow up in more detail, time permitting. But it's also going to be able to help me draft a new message. And that new message I could draft specifically from bullet points. Tell John that we need to get started with building Jolly Roger Java. And these are the 3 things that are top of mind. And that's all I have to put into the message. It's going to build out the rest of the message for me in the tone or format that I want. It could even sound like me if I wanted it to. And then it'll send that message to John, and then we're off and running. And coming soon, you're going to have the ability to summarize across multiple email threads. That's a new feature that's just now starting to roll out publicly. If you're working in Microsoft Word, you're going to have 2 Copilot experiences. In the body of the document, you're going to be able to draft and create new content, even reference existing content that you already have. So maybe you have a statement of work and you want to build a business proposal around that, or vice versa. You got a proposal, now you want to build a statement of work. You're going to be able to do that using the draft feature that's actually built into Microsoft Word. But you can also use the Copilot side panel and you can summarize large documents. You can ask questions against those large documents. And you can even reference other files now from those large documents. So it's going to have a dual experience inside of Word for you. If you're working in Excel and you're using table-based data, you're going to be able to do things like gain key insights and analyze that data. And Copilot's very, very good, better than a human at doing this. It's going to show you insights that you may not have thought of, or correlations that you didn't know existed. It's going to extend your capabilities. Beyond that, though, it's going to help you to quickly do things like conditional formatting. It's going to help you to quickly create and generate formulas. It's even going to help you to create visualizations to drive further impact based off of the data inside of those tables. So it's really, really powerful, and it's going to be able to extend your capabilities and democratize the process of working with formulas and conditional formatting for all users. If you're working in PowerPoint, you're going to be able to draft brand new presentations from a simple conversation or referencing an existing file like a Word document or even an Excel table. Not only does it generate a new presentation for you, it goes ahead and drops in things like sections. It helps you to create speaker notes, and it'll even help you with rewriting content as well as adding visualizations to that content, whether it's smart art or whether it's things like graphics for your presentation. So you could easily take a Word document, convert it to an outline, and create a PowerPoint presentation in a matter of minutes, versus if you were to do this manually, it could take hours. It saves you a ton of time. So there's a lot of things that you can do to get started quickly with Microsoft 365 and Copilot. For example, recapping meetings, summarizing email threads and drafting new messages, summarizing a document with Copilot Chat, or getting an update on a project with Copilot Chat, brainstorming, writing a new document based off of existing content, revising content, translating, and more. These are things. Pause the screen. Try these 10 things out. I'm interested to see what results you've gotten and what some of your feedback is. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really interested to see how you actually use that. There are a number of resources available from Microsoft. For example, we've got Copilot Labs as a resource. I'll put that link in the chat window. Or not Copilot Labs, adoption.microsoft.com for Copilot. Adoption.microsoft.com has a number of kits to get you started. There's some prompt engineering information. There's also some day in the life scenarios that are really, really valuable. We'll make sure those are in the chat window for you. And then with that, I am going to open up things for some Q&A, but this is just to kind of get you started thinking about Copilot for your organization. If you want to learn more, come join me at TechCon 365. We had a conference coming up in Seattle, 1st of June. We'll be in DC in August, and we're going to be in Dallas in November. And that's just this year. TechCon 365 has been around for a number of years now. I'm fortunate to be one of the speakers there. I would love to see you in person for a full day workshop on all things Copilot that goes way deeper than what we have time for here today. In that particular workshop, we're going to talk about not only how to get started with Copilot for Microsoft 365, but in that hands-on workshop, I'm going to walk you through each of the different Copilot experiences. I'm going to show you how to use prompt engineering and do really advanced ask and features inside of Copilot that you might not have thought were possible. I'm going to show you how to reinvent a business process and streamline it using Copilot to take something that may have taken hours or even days and turn it down to something you can do in minutes. So that's going to be coming up in Seattle and in DC and later this fall in Dallas. So I thank you for your time and for being here with us today for this particular webinar. If you have any questions, we've got the chat window open. Happy to demo a couple of things and answer any additional questions. So there is one queued up. Ryan, hey, Ryan, nice to see you, sir. What's the biggest game changer in your day-to-day using Copilot? The biggest game changer for me for Copilot day-to-day is the ability to quickly get started with something and to turn that into something completely different. I do a lot of technical training, and a lot of times what that means is I have to go in and synthesize information. So like I might have to go and reference this document on how to play, share, and download information inside of Microsoft Teams related to a meeting. Then I have to go and cross-reference that with information at learn.microsoft.com, where things like the limits and some of the more admin-based features reside. I have to take those two things, and then I have to distill that down to a document that I can deliver to a teammate so that they know not only what are the steps that they need to do to manage a Teams meeting recording, but also what are the limits? Where's the recording going to live? Who's going to have access to that recording? Is there a retention policy in place? Based off of that, then I have to take that, turn it into a deliverable. Maybe it's a one-page job aid. Maybe it's a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe I have to deliver a training on that. So with Copilot, I can synthesize this, convert it quickly to an outline, like in Microsoft Word, take that outline, convert it to a PowerPoint presentation, and then I can go and deliver the training. I can take the transcript of that training, and then I can use that to maybe create a post or an announcement in the organization using my voice and the way that I delivered that thing, and I can publish that to all of my users. So to answer your question, what's the biggest game changer in my day-to-day? It's the ability of Copilot to help me take all this complex information, to simplify it, to convert it into something new quickly and easily, and then to deliver content based off of that. I've been using basically Copilot to do this since it was released last March, and it is significantly overhauled the way that I'm able to deliver user training and adoption. So great question there. Appreciate that one. All right. Next up, to our friend Fairy Greek Mother. Uh, she has recently summarized a 365 deep dive. If you don't know, I have a YouTube channel and I go by 365 deep dive along with my co-presenter John Moore, and we do a 2-hour deep dive each and every month. So Fairy Geek Mother has actually summarized one of our videos using Edge, and yes, Edge in the sidebar can actually summarize YouTube videos. It's pretty amazing. Summarized one of those videos for the learning outcomes in that presentation. I love it. I think that's a great use case for it. Using Copilot to summarize videos, whether they're in stream in the Microsoft environment or whether it's in YouTube, for instance, that's a great use case for it. Next question, is Copilot active in OneNote today? Yes, you can use Copilot in the desktop version of OneNote today on a Windows device or Windows PC. It does not currently work in OneNote in the web, and it doesn't work on Mac. But if you have OneNote Windows PC, yes, you can use Copilot inside of OneNote today. It'll allow you to work within a section and work with content within that particular section. Can you show again how to access Copilot for Microsoft Word? So let's say, for example, I'll start very basic from Microsoft 365 Home. From here, if I wanted to, I could create a brand new document. I'm just going to hit create. Hopefully this won't take forever. There we go. And I'm just going to do a blank Word document. All right, so I'm going to open that up. So here I am inside of Copilot for Microsoft Word. I'm in the web browser, but this also works on the desktop across Windows and Mac. Now, right away, if I want to create draft content, I can go into the body of the document and I can say, create a outline from, and I can even reference content that I have in the Microsoft Cloud. So maybe there's a business plan or a presentation that I have out there. I can even browse my OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams and find content that I want to reference. So maybe I go into my files and I'm going to go into, I got some coffee shop plans over here. I've got a coffee shop pitch deck. That's a PowerPoint. And I'm going to have it create something based off of that. So this is one way you can actually use it inside of Microsoft Word. Now, while it's running, I'm going to open up the Copilot side panel over here. And I'm going to let that, let this prompt do what it needs to do. But I could go over here, and in this area, I could ask a question against the document that I'm on. I could summarize the document. I could use the Copilot Lab prompt library to see like what things that like I can ask it to do. And this is like really great for not necessarily drafting content, but interacting with like a large document. So like that's really what you need to think about. There's drafting, and then there's copiloting against that particular document. So it's going to create this outline based off of that PowerPoint presentation. You see it says it's like finishing up. It's just creating some bullet points for me. But that's one of the ways you can get started with it inside of Microsoft Word. Now, I will point out I am enterprise licensed and I do have Copilot for Microsoft 365. That's how I'm able to take advantage of all of these great features here. All right, so it's almost done generating that, but that's how you can get started. Now, while that's running, I'm going to show you one last thing. I think this one is really cool. I can't take credit for this. This was from a Microsoft teammate. This is a prompt that they use. I think it's really awesome. They shared this publicly. I'm going to post this out there, but this prompt is really powerful. I need to wrap up my day and prepare for tomorrow. So create a section that we call today. Give me a short paragraph of what I've done today, and then give me a separate list based off of my meetings. Create a next section called tomorrow and help me get an overview of what I've got on my schedule tomorrow. And then the last section, call that one Get Prepared, and then write a summary and get me prepared for those particular meetings. And when this one runs, what it's actually going to do is look at my calendar and my emails and my conversations, and it's going to start putting that all together in one place. So I'm going to let this run. This one's like really, really powerful. But this is an advanced example of a prompt. And if you happen to be in Seattle or DC or in Dallas later this year, and you join me for the Next Level Productivity with Microsoft Copilot workshop, I'll show you how to do amazing prompts like this and more advanced prompt techniques inside of Microsoft Copilot. So with that, I'll let this run and then we'll wrap this one up. But I do thank you for your time and attention here. I hope you found this webinar helpful. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you have any other questions, send those over in the chat window. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in a future Copilot workshop, Copilot event. Maybe we'll do another webinar coming up. But that's our workshop for today. So thanks, everybody.